Good day to all. Let's dive into the exciting world of criminal intrigue and incredible adventures. Today, I will tell you the story of a man who has become a legend in the world of crime, the richest diamond robber, Jackson Storm. Jackson was born and raised in a poverty-stricken area of Chicago. His parents, James and Alice Storm, struggled to survive, working unskilled jobs and facing constant financial difficulties. Jackson did not have the luxury of enjoying his childhood like other children his age. Instead, he witnessed the harsh reality of street life. From a very early age, Jackson understood that in this world you need to take your strength if you want to achieve something. His razor-sharp mind soon learned to survive in this environment. Instead of falling into the cycle of gangsterism, he decided to use his skills to provide for himself and his family. From the age of 12, Jackson was already noticed in local circles as a promising young genius in the field of theft. He learned to bypass security systems, pick locks, and disappear unnoticed before the police could arrive at the crime scene. His courage and composure sometimes seemed more mature than those twice his age. For Jackson, each theft became not just a way to make money, but also a step towards his dream: to steal the most valuable diamonds in the world. This gem was to him a symbol of wealth, power, and freedom that he had never experienced in his life. Every year, Jackson became more and more immersed in the world of crime, becoming more experienced and cunning. His parents, although they suspected what their son was doing, preferred to turn a blind eye to this fact, consoling themselves with the hope that he would find another way out of his miserable existence. As time passed, Jackson became more and more familiar with the world of crime. He became known as one of the most dangerous robbers in Chicago. His name began to inspire fear and awe. But for him, all these were just steps towards his real goal: to steal the most precious diamonds in the world. And so, when Jackson turned 20, he decided that it was time to make his dream come true. He developed the most complex and daring plan of his career: the robbery of an exhibition of the most valuable diamonds in history. This was his chance to finish his career on top, take away everything he had dreamed of since childhood, and disappear into the shadows forever. After many weeks of careful observation and analysis, Jackson learned of the Jewel of the Night exhibit, the most precious collection of diamonds that was to be held at the city's prestigious museum. This was his chance, but also his most risky task. Jackson set about devising the plan with the tenacity and coolness that characterized him. He studied every aspect of the event: the museum's layout, security systems, security schedules. He also conducted a detailed study of past robberies of similar events, identifying their weak points. Jackson then assembled a team of the best people in their field. He knew that every team member needed to be held to the highest level of professionalism and trust. Together, they developed a plan that was as complex as it was bold. The first step was to penetrate the museum's security system. To do this, Jackson hired an expert in hacking computer systems. He then bribed a member of the security guard to give them access to the circuit diagrams and locations of the security systems. The next step was to bypass video surveillance systems and motion sensors. To do this, the team developed special devices that mask movement and prevent their detection. Finally, they developed an escape plan, providing for every possible trap or obstacle. Jackson knew that escape was the most critical moment, and they had to be prepared for anything. The plan was ready, the team was prepared. They knew the time had come to act. On the day of the Jewel of the Night exhibition, with the museum full of visitors and security at its highest level of vigilance, Jackson and his team sprang into action. First, a computer hacking expert breached the museum's security system, giving the team undetected access to the exhibition area. They disguised themselves as museum workers, using fake IDs and deceiving the guards. Then, using special devices, they bypassed video surveillance systems and motion sensors, remaining undetected. Jackson and his team were free to move around the museum without arousing suspicion. When they reached the Jewel of the Night exhibit, Jackson used his knowledge and experience to find the most valuable diamonds and quickly deal with the defense systems that guarded them. However, as soon as they began removing the diamonds from the display cases, an unexpected complication arose. The museum's security acted faster than they expected and began firing at the team. Jackson and his team were forced to engage in hand-to-hand combat, using all their skills and experience to protect themselves and complete the mission. There was a fight full of tension and adrenaline, but in the end, thanks to their professionalism and teamwork, they were able to grab the diamonds and escape from the museum, leaving the guards literally empty-handed. As they ran through the city streets, they found themselves being pursued by police officers. A race to the bottom began in which Jackson and his team had to use all their skills and cunning to avoid arrest and disappear into the shadows while keeping their diamonds. The police began hunting Jackson and his team, but they were not going to give up without a fight. Jackson was prepared for such a development of events and thought out an escape plan in advance. The team crossed the streets with lightning speed, using confusing alleys and backyards to avoid pursuit. They used knowledge of the city and its underground tunnels to find hidden paths leading to safety. Jackson was ahead of his pursuers, leading his team through the most unexpected routes. He knew that in this game every second mattered and they had to act quickly and decisively. Soon the police were on their tail, but Jackson and his team were already at the finish line. They reached a hidden car, which Jackson had prepared in advance for the escape. Quickly getting into the car, they rushed forward, leaving the police far behind. As they eluded the police, the adrenaline of their pursuit began to subside. They breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that they had completed an incredibly difficult task. Finally, when the danger was over, they were able to rest and enjoy their spoils. Jackson and his team returned to their hideout, where they could safely plan their next move. They knew now was the time to tread carefully and stay one step ahead of the law. But for Jackson and his team, it was just another success in their exciting world of crime. Having received precious diamonds worth $7 million, Jackson's team felt invincible. They hid in their secret hideout, where Jackson began to develop a plan for further action. First, they needed to secure their prey. Jackson knew that diamonds could be of interest not only to the police, but also to other criminal groups. He decided to hide the jewelry in a safe place where no one could find it. The largest manhunt in history was organized to capture Jackson's team. The police used all their resources and means to track their whereabouts. They approached hundreds of witnesses, followed every clue and lead, but Jackson's team remained elusive. Jackson and his team were very experienced and careful criminals. They knew how to cover their tracks, how to avoid making mistakes that could lead to their arrest. They managed to remain undetected even with the police on their heels. The police used the latest technology and methods to catch Jackson and his team, but every attempt ended in failure. Jackson's team stayed ahead of the curve by constantly changing their locations and communication methods. They soon became legends in the world of crime. Some saw them as heroes fighting against the system, while others saw them as a threat to society. But regardless of opinion, everyone was amazed by their professionalism and ability to avoid arrest. This was a new challenge for Jackson and his team. They knew they would have to be on their guard at all times, but they also knew they could do even better. Their story continued, and each new day presented them with a new challenge and a new opportunity for achievement. The next large-scale diamond heist presented Jackson's team with a new challenge and an opportunity to show their professionalism. They decided to take on the mansion of wealthy billionaire Arthur Stanford, which was famous for its valuable collections and sophisticated security systems. To begin with, Jackson conducted an analysis of all previous operations and searches to identify weaknesses and errors. He realized that it was important to change his style and approach to robberies in order to remain invisible to the police. He then assembled his team and conducted a series of training and exercises to improve their skills and coordination. They studied the latest methods of bypassing security systems, developed new hacking techniques, and learned new ways to move covertly. For this heist, Jackson decided to take a more complex and cunning approach. He developed a plan that included not only infiltrating the security of the facility, but also creating an illusion to distract the guards and police from their actions. To do this, they used fake alarms and situations to divert the security's attention to other objects. They also created false leads to confuse the police investigation. When the moment of action arrived, Jackson's team was fully prepared. They carried out their plan exactly, without making the slightest mistakes or deviations. Soon after the robbery, when they disappeared into the shadows, the police were literally stunned, unable to find the slightest trace that could lead to Jackson's team. Jackson's team knew that billionaire Arthur Stanford's mansion had the highest level of security, including state-of-the-art security systems and technology. However, this did not bother Jackson and his team. On the contrary, they accepted the challenge and decided to bypass all the obstacles on the way to their goal. The first step was to study the mansion inside and out. To do this, Jackson infiltrated his man into the billionaire's household staff in order to gain access to detailed information about the location of diamonds and security systems. With all the information they needed, Jackson's team began to develop the perfect plan. They used their knowledge of security weaknesses and developed strategies to circumvent each of them. On the day of the robbery, Jackson's team infiltrated the mansion, masquerading as staff and guests at a party hosted by the billionaire. They acted quickly and silently, bypassing security systems and diverting security attention to false signals. When they finally reached the diamond vault, they were greeted by the final security, a combination lock that required a unique code to gain access. However, Jackson had already planned this moment for a long time and was able to break into the lock using fake codes obtained from the billionaire. Having successfully retrieved the diamonds, Jackson's team left the mansion, leaving behind only traces of a well-planned and executed robbery. Arthur Stanford discovered in the morning that his valuable collection of diamonds had disappeared, and the police were in complete confusion without a single clue or suspect. Having received $12 million worth of valuable diamonds and jewelry, Jackson's team felt on top of the world. They carefully hid their spoils and began to celebrate their success. However, despite their victory, they knew that they could not relax. After such a large-scale robbery, the police began an even more intense search, and criminal gangs began to put up high rewards for information about Jackson's team. Therefore, Jackson and his team decided to remain constantly vigilant and prepared for any possible consequences. They knew their success would attract even more attention, but they were up for the challenge. After some time, when the police and criminal gangs began to gradually reduce the intensity of the search, Jackson and his team decided to move on to the next step. They realized that they needed to use their success as motivation for further action. Jackson began to develop new ambitious plans that would allow them to achieve even greater success in the world of crime. He knew that with the resources and experience they had now, they could do even more. Thus, by stealing $12 million worth of jewelry, Jackson's team not only proved their professionalism and skill, but also opened a new chapter in their criminal career, where every new step was a challenge and an opportunity for achievement. The police, despite their efforts, were unable to find a single piece of evidence that could lead to Jackson's team. They used all their resources and technology to investigate, but to no avail. Each subsequent attempt to get closer to the criminals was unsuccessful. Jackson and his team, realizing the gravity of the situation, took drastic measures. They destroyed all evidence related to the robbery, destroying CCTV footage, erasing traces and disguising their actions so as to leave no trace. Thanks to their organization and professionalism, Jackson's team not only avoided arrest, but also left the police completely confused. They realized that their success had given rise to a new round of persecution, and they had to be prepared for more difficult challenges. After successfully robbing the mansion of billionaire Arthur Stanford, Jackson's team decided to take on an even more ambitious goal: the robbery of the largest jewelry store in Chicago. This store was famous for its huge stock of jewelry and high level of security, making it one of the most difficult targets for robbery. Jackson and his team began preparing for this robbery with the utmost seriousness. They began by thoroughly examining the store inside and out, observing its operating hours, security systems, and security patrols. They then began analyzing possible weaknesses in the store's security. They studied the building's layout, unraveled security system diagrams, and analyzed security protocols. During their reconnaissance missions, they also paid attention to all possible entrances and exits in order to find the most vulnerable points. After carefully examining every aspect of the store, Jackson's team began to develop a robbery plan. They discussed various scenarios and courses of action, taking each possibility and security response into account. They also created a detailed action schedule and assigned roles within the team. Based on their experience and professionalism, Jackson's team developed a complex but well-thought-out plan that would allow them to successfully carry out the robbery of a Chicago jewelry store. Their goal was clear: to get to the most valuable jewelry and escape without being noticed by security or the police. Jackson's trained team decided to rob the jewelry store at the most opportune moment, when security was least vigilant. They infiltrated the store, hacking security systems and bypassing security patrols. Everything was going according to plan until one of the team members, let's call him David, accidentally got stuck inside the store as they were about to leave it. When David realized that he was left inside, he tried to hide and find another way to leave the store, but he was detained by one of the security guards, who unexpectedly returned to his post. The other team members were already far away, but they could not leave their comrade to his fate. After a successful escape, Jackson's team was divided. One of their number ended up in the hands of the police, but thanks to Michael's courage and their good preparation, they were able to keep their valuable diamonds and avoid being investigated. After receiving $70 million worth of jewelry, Jackson's team realized it was something unique and historic. They were at the peak of their success, but were aware that with such a large haul, even more attention would be directed at them. Jackson and his team decided not to waste a minute. They fled to their hideout where they began planning their next move. They knew they would have to act carefully and quickly to keep the police from finding their trail. They first decided to get rid of all evidence related to the robbery. They destroyed all evidence related to this crime and proceeded to create an alibi to divert the attention of the police. They then began to plan how they would use their spoils. They knew that with so much jewelry, they would have to be especially careful not to attract too much attention. However, despite their best efforts, Jackson's team knew they couldn't relax. They knew that the police would aggressively search for them, and that they still had a lot of work to do to maintain their freedom and keep their jewelry. Thus, having carried out the largest robbery in the history of the Chicago jewelry industry, Jackson's team remained persistent and determined, ready for any challenges and obstacles that might come their way. After a major heist and Jackson disappearing from the radar, his team was left in shock and confusion. They could not understand what had happened to their leader and bitterly regretted his disappearance. But despite this, they had to make the difficult decision to continue their criminal activities without him. However, even without Jackson, the team was strong and united. They decided to use all their resources and skills to maintain their freedom and protect their interests. They redistributed duties and responsibilities within the team to compensate for the absence of their leader. Police, on the other hand, have launched an active investigation into Jackson's disappearance. They used every available resource and technology to find him and bring him to justice for his crimes. But the more they investigated, the more it became clear that Jackson was very good at what he did, and that his disappearance was well planned and executed. While the police continued their efforts to find Jackson, Jackson himself continued to lurk in the shadows. He knew that now he would have to tread carefully and take new measures to maintain his freedom. But despite all the difficulties, he was ready for this challenge and was ready to continue his criminal career, no matter what. After months of intensive investigation, police were still unable to find a trace of Jackson. He remained at large, hiding from the authorities and continuing his criminal activities in a new guise. For Jackson's team, his disappearance was a heavy blow, but they decided to continue his work. They were determined in their pursuit of success and were willing to fight for their goals at any cost. Thus, the story of Jackson and his team remained unsolved and mysterious. They became legends in the world of crime, leaving behind traces that could not be erased. And although the police continued to search for them, Jackson remained unattainable, being an eternal mystery to the law.